Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in to the PWTorch Fireside Chat for September 22nd, 2022. I'm PWTorch Assistant Editor Zack Heydorn. That's Tyler Sage. Tyler, what's going on, man?
Hey, not much. Just living the dream here with you. As I said to you off air, a little tepid, if you will, week of wrestling, which I think we can all get behind and just focus on the wrestling.
Yep.
Unless, as we have done many times in the past, unless there's some crazy breaking news of whatever. But yeah, very excited to talk some wrestling, talk some decisions, talk some trajectory of both companies. I think we might actually be 50-50 big companies
50-50.
today instead of which is, I mean, it's always the day after Dynamite, so that always makes sense why we talk. And that's had the biggest news, right? WWE's been the aircraft carrier that if there are changes, it takes a week to turn it in a direction, and AEW's been a little U-boat that is struggling to get through choppy water, and I think it's upgraded itself to a battleship, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think it has. And I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, if this year is any indication, we should have some, crazy breaking news hit in about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But until then, it is kind of nice just to sit back and just talk wrestling and like leave it at that. And I think we're gonna be able to do that today, provided no crazy big stories as we're on the air here. Man, I mean, so AEW, like, coming out of some just very tumultuous weeks, and we talked last week and the week before how Tony Khan seemed to be kind of just like rewriting the ship, right? And let's just get back on track. Let's get a world champion, and we can go from there. And it felt like yesterday at Grand Slam was kind of the I don't know, like the final like screw in that project, right? Like, you have a world champion now. You've got him slated to go up against a heel challenger, which in quotes, we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. And so I like where they're at right now. You have a tag team division that's hot with the Acclaimed. Saraya coming in is going to hopefully jolt the women's division, with some energy. And so, it's not as kind of like a speeding train, like going down the track, and you're not sure if it's going to fall off of it or not, but it's steady, it's smooth, and it's probably what they need right now.
Yeah, I agree. Both of us with transport allegories here to start the show, or
yes.
So I'm happy we didn't even plan that in the pre-show notes. So happy about that. But yeah, no, that's what they need. They need to chill the F out on stuff that is not happening 8 to 10 on Wednesdays, or 10 to 11, or 10 to midnight now this week on Fridays. Everything else needs to chill out, and I think that's a good spot to be in. And it seems like, if one can believe what's happening, having Moxley and Danielson and Jericho as the people that are kind of dictating the energy of the locker room,
mm-hmm.
Is the way to go. So yeah, and I'm trying to read what Zack is putting here before. Sorry.
While you read that,
yeah,
are you surprised, or are you happy with the decision to go with Moxley here? Is that the call you would have made in the end? I know we talked about it last week. We both kind of gave the nod to Moxley, but seeing it play out, do you stick with that kind of call from last week?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I have the exact same opinion of that's about as meta as I like to go, is Moxley being champion in the spot for all the things that we all know what's going on behind the scenes. And he's been the rock of the company, and someone that has, been a respectable, high profile star in that company, that's been pushed this year, and really the only one that has not really had anything come up about him, and a positive story of him overcoming the alcoholism that he faced last year and all that stuff. So that the way the match was structured, as watching it live, I'm curious what your thoughts were, but I personally wanted Moxley to win. I think that's no surprise, but the way it was set up, it felt like he, almost had to. It felt like a very WWE style match. Obviously both those guys have a lot of time there, but where it was Danielson working his very specific face, but working the heel side of the match and just absolutely dominating the match. And then the near falls at the end. I mean, I thought it was really well structured. It was a 20-minute match that felt like a 28-30-minute match somehow to me, in a good way. Like it didn't feel rushed to tell a full extended story. But yeah, I mean, as watching it as a viewer, if I'm not doing this with you, if Danielson wins that match, I think that why can you give to Moxley as like a thanks guy sort of thing. So
Yeah. I'm with you. I think it was the right call. I really liked the match too. I thought it was the match that both those two needed to have together. I thought it just was so like the striking was so crisp, and Moxley taking that that beating from Danielson, as you said, like it was believable. I thought they had some believable near falls too, that got you thinking like, all right, maybe they will go with Danielson here. But as the match played out, you're kind of like, okay, this is John Moxley's time to overcome, and he did. And so I really liked that. I liked that they got to have that match. I also like that they kind of kept, they have a story now going with Danielson. I said this on the post show last night that, he's yet to vanquish John Moxley. Right. Mm-hmm. And those stories can be fun, if you play them out like long term. And so they have that they can go back to now, at some point, whether Moxley's champion or whether he's not champion. I think they can always go back and revisit that story. So yeah, I mean, I give it a thumbs up. I don't know, like John Moxley has had such a good year, and like it makes me wonder, like, how does he have a better year next year, or a better run with the title this time than he did, over the summer? And so it's like, I hope that Tony Khan has opponents lined up for him, whether that's just to get to Full Gear and then maybe he's going to drop the title to MJF, or maybe it's at Revolution. I don't know, but I hope that they've got, a plan for what they want to do with Moxley here. And we'll see. There's some spoilers up on PWTorch.com right now. We won't get into that here, but you can check that out and kind of see what else might be on the docket for him. But I just think he's turned into such a like important guy in the company that I don't know if he can just be, a guy that just has good matches here and there and is the guy you lean on. I think he has to be the guy now that you're building for, at least here in the immediate future, I think.
Mm-hmm. I presume you're talking about Rampage spoilers.
Yes.
I'm reading through that. Okay. Obviously, we're not getting into that here either. You can go read on the site for that stuff too. But yeah, I mean, whoever won the Battle Royal, the golden ticket, I think Charlie. If there's any wrestler named Charlie, they were destined to win that, and, or for the gimmick of the tag team with 4 grandparents in a bed, maybe would win that. So, sorry, but it's just such a dumb name for
it is. Well, and like, why call that Battle Royal so many different things? You've got Casino Battle Royal, like the Last Chance Battle Royal, Golden Ticket, like pick a lane, pick a damn lane. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's the biggest question now in my mind within AEW. Besides, we talked a little bit on the pre-show last night, and when you talk out loud, you kind of can establish your own mindset on like where a company needs to be and whatnot. But no time in AEW's history has the world title, the tag title story, and the women's title story all been 3 even okay stories at the same time, with the same level of attention, where you feel like, okay, these are all in a kind of a good spot. So I think that is, as we talked about at the very beginning here, of slow and steady wins the race a little bit at this point. And you've got kind of all the talent you're going to assemble for a period of time. And now doing that, I think would be the main goal. But besides that, the main story here is, does MJF beat Moxley now in a couple weeks? And is that the right decision to go with the company? And, I'm, as of September 22nd, 2022, not on board for MJF taking it off Moxley at this point. Now it's all depending on the run and where we are from here, but it feels like that is not the way to treat this run of Moxley, is to have him kind of stop and start. I mean, I'm not saying it needs to be Roman Reigns here, but I think he's got the potential relatively quickly, if you eliminate the couple weeks he wasn't champion here, that this is already the best run for an AEW champion, maybe minus Jericho at the beginning, just because the company was so intriguing and new. But to not just throw that away and have MJF, which we'll talk about you whenever you want to, but basically, I was curious what his strategy was going to be to get heel heat last night, and it seems like he probably did the best thing that you could, which is hit Tony Schiavone. But all this, you can't hit Tony every week, and everything up to that point was not working to get over as a heel. He dropped some of the calling everybody lard asses and whatnot, but that's a big problem, and I don't know what the answer is to that at this point.
So I did not like that segment last night. Well, first of all, hello, Dr. Ross. Hello, Zack. Hello, Tracy. Thanks for joining us live here. Zack, we'll get to your question here in a minute, or your comment in a minute. But I am not digging what they're doing with MJF right now. Like, I think that they've kind of, what's up, Hazan? They've lost their way with him a little bit. And I think it's one of those situations where, to me, what made MJF so special was that his heel work was designed to be hated, like legitimately hated, right? Mm-hmm. And he was successful in that regard. Like, it never crossed the line of being like fun to hate MJF, right? Like, it was like it would felt like a genuine disdain for that guy in most cities. Obviously Long Island is a different story, but in most cities it was pretty universal, bad, like negative reactions toward him. And now, like, that all seems to be missing at this point, where it's like the crowds are kind of in on like MJF's heat, and it's more of a joke than it is like an actual means to be hated. It's like they're part, like that audience. It's almost like a call to action from MJF to them. Like, hey, I'm gonna call all your wives ugly, and you're gonna laugh because it's me, and I'm a big star. And it's like you've lost there what made that act special and impactful. And so you add that on to the fact that you have this guy in MJF who's working so damn hard to be hated, and he's just not. I maintain what I said a couple weeks ago when he first came back which is, I think this is one of the first times Tony Khan kind of misread his audience and misread his fans, in that I don't know how you trot MJF out for that promo after Double or Nothing. Hear the reaction that it got that night, and then think that he can come back as the same heel as before. Yeah. And I think we're seeing that right now. And I think you can have MJF be a babyface. Like, I think that can be a thing, Hazan. I mean, I don't, what's the point of it? The point of it is just to align him and book him in a way that matches up with the reaction that he's getting. I think that's always what you want to do. And I mean, poor Wheeler Yuta, right? I mean, the guy just gets butchered out there, like yesterday with MJF, and he's trying to call MJF all these dastardly names, and then you got the audience cheering him on as those bad names are out there. So I don't know. He's getting cheered. It's going to be a problem. Like, I'm rambling, but it'll look so bad if he's out there kind of eviscerating Jon Moxley for his troubles with alcohol, right? For example. Mm-hmm. And you have audience like 5 seconds before that or 5 seconds after cheering him on. Like, it's just, that is not going to line up well. I think it's going to come off really bad. So that's where I'm at. I think they're going to have a problem here. I think that, you've neutralized some of MJF's, specialness. And I hope they can get it back. But I will see.
If I can, do you want the rating just like literally just came out as you were talking? Would you?
Oh, yeah.
There. So 1,039,000.
Okay, so
Was
down
the
from last week.
Yeah, it was number one on cable.
Okay.
0.35 in the key demo. Is your top line info there?
Okay.
So I think the overall number, is not good for what you built here. But number one in cable is what Tony Khan's going to tweet about here in T-minus 5 seconds. So, so yeah.
So what? But last week it was 1.1, right?
Yeah, it was almost 1.2. Yeah, it was like 1.17, something like
Okay.
that. So I assume
That's interesting, man.
that's me reading it correct, right? I mean, it's 1,039 is like the far right column. So I think that's 1,039,000.
Yeah. That
So,
is. Yep.
So I had it up because I didn't want to get scooped by anyone in the comments. I mean, I appreciate you guys giving us those numbers always, but wanted to be on my toes there. Anyway, what you're saying, yes, couldn't agree more. As Tracy said here in the comments, it's hard to have great stories when basically your crowd are heels too, right? They're as MJF tried to kind of be like, hey, just think about it, you're little devils if you're following me, right? Like, and people are like, yeah, we're having fun, we know what this is, and it's really hard to do that. We talked about on the show, there's no way that MJF was not going to be a babyface when he premiered in Chicago, a super smart fan area. And then the next 3 weeks are all in New York. You're in Buffalo, Albany, and then New York City. Like MJF territory. Yeah. They only ever work in the Northeast anyway. So it's people that have seen AEW 3-4 times at this point, right? We've talked about previous episodes about how that's a problem. But so you're getting more, slightly smaller crowds that are more hardcore people that want to be in on the joke, be in on the fun. And I truly think if they're really committed to this MJF as a heel thing, they have to go Mick Foley ECW route to get him back over as a heel. Where Mick Foley's out there barely doing wrestling moves and having really boring matches to get booed in front of that crowd and not bleeding and not doing spectacular stuff, doing, a 1930s style gotch style match. And is that MJF going out there having bad promos on purpose where he barely talks about anything, which is bad TV, right? So that is not a good plan of action to have MJF get over naturally as a heel because he's boring and sucks, right? That is a dangerous game that both parties don't want to play, being Tony Khan and MJF. So I don't know what you do at this point. I mean, Moxley, if you listen to the crowd reaction last night, I would say MJF's whole segment, the crowd was more behind whatever MJF was doing than even John Moxley winning last night. And, it's not like it's overshadowing the MJF over Moxley thing, but the Moxley thing should have been a bigger deal, I think, in comparison, right? If you're for the live crowd. Two, because obviously if you want MJF to be over as a heel, you have him beat your super babyface champion, John Moxley, who brought the company through all this hardship, etc. That's a good way on paper to get him over as a heel. But if you have that MJF Moxley match at Full Gear, I mean, MJF's going to be the huge babyface in that thing. Who do you think's going to that show? It's all the people that were in Chicago and all the people that were Grand Slam, right? It's the 5,000-6,000 fans that travel to everything, that are part of wrestling media, hardcore fans, etc. That go to everything and are going to be cheering MJF more than they are Moxley, which is a big problem.
It's a huge problem, and you're right about that show. If they're going to do that match on that show, it's like there's you add into the fact that people these days want to just see title changes like that. That's going to get a big reaction, like a positive babyface reaction of MJF winning the title over John Moxley. Like, I just don't see it going any other way at this point. And so, I think, it makes you, there's a lot of things I think that have happened in AEW where if you're Tony Khan, want to try to pivot, and he's hit on some of them and he's missed on others. The Acclaimed is one that I think he's hit on, and we can talk about that in a minute in terms of recognizing, hey, okay, wow, these guys are over right now. Who knows how long it will last? So let's go with it. Misses, I think, continuing to paint Cody Rhodes as a babyface, when he was still with the company, that's a miss. I think this FTR is another one, not recognizing their momentum and going with that. And I think this is the third one in my eyes where it's like, man, you had something, and you went a different direction, and now I'm not sure you can get it back. Even if you turn MJF babyface, it's not going to be as authentic and raw as it would have been the night after, or the show after All Out.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think MJF is talented enough to, still salvage a good bit out of this and see what he does. Morrissey coming in, attacking Yuta was not. I mean, I liked the segment probably in a vacuum more than you did. I didn't think it was fantastic, but I liked bits and pieces of it. I liked Yuta being in that spot, which proved that, he can stand opposite MJF and hold his own to some extent, which I thought was a positive. But Morrissey coming out and being as heavy, I was like, oh God, this is more of my problems with the firm and MJF being associated with them in some way, shape, or form. It's like, maybe that'll get him booed, right? You put him around a bunch of people who people don't care about and are bored by, maybe he'll get booed, or Morrissey will get cheered as a result. I don't know, but we'll see where it goes. I'm not going to say it's a full no way this is going to work situation, because AEW's done some magic tricks in the past to turn me around, but I do think there needs to be some heavy altering to the plan to get MJF back over as a heel, and punching Tony Schiavone certainly helps that matter. And if that's interacting, who's most over? If he is cutting off Max Caster from doing a rap, that would help. Just think of all the low hanging fruit. You got to basically just attack the zone for the next 3-4 weeks and just have him be super over as a heel. Do you know where they are next week off the top of your head?
I don't.
I'll look it up. So while you can go to your next point if you'd like to.
Yeah. No. Stephen, thanks for chiming in, and thanks for joining us live. I don't understand people cheering MJF. He stood there and said he refused to honor his contract without getting the pay raise. If that was in football, here in the UK, we'd call him a mercenary footballer here. Yeah, I mean it's.
Thank you. They all beat me to it. It's in Philly. Sorry.
Philly. Wow.
Yep.
You guys are on the money today. So you brought up a good point, which is, do you go to MJF versus Jon Moxley at Full Gear? Is that what you're building towards here? And that MJF holding that chip makes you think that that's what's on the horizon, and it's probably the biggest match that they can put on, right now, given the talent that they have access to. But I just don't think that it's time for that match yet, even in 7 weeks or whatever it is. When MJF, when he wrestles for the title, he pretty much has to win it. Either he is a heel or a babyface, and you just got it back on Jon Moxley. I think you hold on this. I think I would slow burn this thing, and I just would pivot to other challengers, like maybe Moxley and Adam Cole if he's coming back, or something to that effect. But because I don't know that you're ready to take the belt off Moxley, and because of that, I don't think you want MJF losing to him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of negatives you can pull out of this too, right? I mean, if his contract is up, sometime in is it like January 1st, 24? Do we know an exact date, or is it more
Jan 1? Yeah, Jan 1 is what the reports indicate.
Okay. So you don't want to slow play him having this chip for a year, but if it's Full Gear 2023 and he wins it and he walks out and we don't know if that's really the story to tell, in my opinion, right? Is him winning the title and then you thinking as a fan, oh my God, he's going to walk out of this company, go to WWE, walk in on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown with the AEW World Title. Yeah. And, I think there's ways to do that I'm obviously not for, as we talked about on the show in general there. But that would be my inclination of what Tony Khan and MJF's master plan would be at some point. Now, do I think he'll hold the chip that long? No, because that is going to get old. And then you have to do a couple of, G1 contract matches where the chip's on the line for somebody, right? Yeah. When you could just earn your way up there. And so, yeah, I would agree with you. It feels a little bit more like the Roman situation with Moxley, then at that point where you're kind of waiting for WrestleMania and who that's going to be like the real pivot point on he could actually lose. And this makes that match feel big and important. So if you do it for Revolution or Double or Nothing, he's got a chip, Double or Nothing. That makes sense, right? And then you have a run out of MJF before he maybe leaves, or you figure it out from there. That would make sense in the timeline. You give Moxley a nice runway. You could also fill in, your Miros, your Andrades, your Brody Kings, whoever you want to like get in there to for that maybe is a little not disgruntled, but they're certainly not gruntle at this point, right? They're somewhere in between, right? So those talents that you want to give a spot to, and you have, let's say, 4. Usually you have one big defense in between pay-per-views. Obviously the pay-per-view itself. You've got Pac last night, who we probably won't talk about, but going pretty much full heel, which I think is the good use of him. He's kind of the original of those guys, that mid-card person who you don't think will be champion, but feels like they're underutilized. So, you can build someone like that and have him and Moxley go at it. And I think that'd be a great match with a different style. And you can make this run feel important, and then get to MJF, and then we'll see where we are, the Royal We, Tony Khan and co. at that point, to see what they do. Cause like at that point, if you're not going to re-sign MJF, like he can do all the promos he wants to, but like I'm not putting it on him to do a 6-month run where it might be difficult to get it off of him, and it turns into bigger problems at that point too. So it gives you like that logistic runway and the storyline runway. So I like your pitch here so far.
We'll see what they do. I mean, I guess I think that'd be the best idea, but Zack makes a good point. Double or Nothing is an awfully long time from now. Yeah. So you really need to work at telling that story. It's certainly worth a try, but yeah, I mean, Zack, you're right. It's a long way away.
Yeah. Another thing, like Shivani last night said he's going to get fined, etc. after he came back on the booth. Like, is there a strategy to have MJF do? I mean, WWE does this a lot with heels, where like Ronda. I think she's currently suspended, right? For whatever, because she's off the road for.
She'll be back, but yeah.
Yeah. So, but like, could you do that with MJF, where he then next week, attacks JR and Excalibur or something, or Marvez, or whoever is a beloved figure that is defenseless within AEW. And then he's off for a period of time, and then you come back and try and do kind of a reset on this character. That also is a strategy I think might behoove everybody in the situation.
Yeah, good point. I agree. I mean, I think you got to do what you do. You got to do what you got to do to make that right. Because I think, look, MJF is still a huge star. It's not that. I just think you want your biggest star like that to be his stories lining up with the reaction that he's getting. This is like the reverse Roman Reigns, and that's not good for the product. I don't think. What do you make of this rating? I think that is an interesting number. Down from last week was surprising, just because of, like you mentioned, all that they kind of put into promoting the show. So 1.1 million essentially. I don't know. I don't think Tony Khan is popping champagne about this.
I don't think so either. And I think if you took the micro, and this is more of a theory, not a law, based on what I've seen the last couple of weeks on the number there. But to me, Chris Jericho is still a big draw, right, in your main event of last week, and announced MJF segment last week, and the last couple of weeks have been built around those two, as well as Danielson and Moxley, right? And Moxley opened the show, right, 2 weeks in a row or 1 week, closed here. So I mean, I love John Moxley, but in the very intermediate, it is raising a flag of Moxley is the guy for about 1 million people, and maybe Jericho, MJF, people like that are a little bit, can lean into a little bit more casual people, maybe a sports entertainment group of people as opposed to a wrestling group of people. That would be the wrestling reason. As Zack has commented below, it's also the start of like bad network TV shows that people watch. So I don't know, the key demo is still strong. So, but if people are watching The Masked Singer, Survivor, whatever, And
Well,
if you do watch that, I am judging you, but beside the point.
But here's the thing, though. Like, I mean, that stuff's happening, But I mean, that's part of the competition. That's why you book the shows that you do. That's why you put, that's why you have to have good stories and characters that people care about and investment. Like, I mean, you don't get a pass just because there's other good stuff on TV. It's like you have to compete. You have to compete with it. I mean, it's part of it. Like WWE doesn't get to they don't get a pass during NFL season. They have to manage those ratings. So I mean, I understand that there was stuff to watch yesterday, but it's like you put your best foot forward on this show and lost viewers, So I still know, I don't know exactly how I feel about that. I think the minute by minutes would be cool to see like, and even the quarter hours when those come out a little bit later, like what matches were the ones that did well? Like how did that acclaimed match, do? Because like in the building, you think that these guys are the biggest stars that the company has.
Yep.
Does it translate to the television audience or to a casual audience or a more casual audience? And then same thing, like you surmised about Jon Moxley, like, okay, he acts like the guy and he has good matches and he, is somebody that people recognize, but is he moving the needle? Well, that'll be really interesting to digest, especially since this was like, a pay-per-view level show.
And I mean, I think the previous 2 weeks, MJF was announced to be there in some capacity, and he was not last night. I mean, I think we all figured if you track it, you figured he'd be there in some way, shape, or form. But it not being announced, like maybe that is worth 50,000 people. I don't know, and everyone's a little different. But from a million, almost 1.2 to 1.03 in the grand scheme. I mean, that's a lot of people, but shows. I mean, look at. I don't know. I mean, SmackDown's gone down a similar percentage, et cetera.
Yeah,
that's like within the oh my gosh, what am I looking for? The
margin of error.
Margin of error. Thank you very much. It's so it's all there, but yeah, it's something you gotta look at. And I think since the comeback, post Punk and the Elite being there and the number being stronger, the show's been built around MJF, Jericho, Punk. I mean, Danielson and Moxley, right? I mean, is there anyone else? Maybe the Acclaimed and Swerve and Our Glory would be the other. But like those four singles guys are the ones that have been the micro rating. I would say Moxley and Danielson out of the four probably draw the least, in my opinion. Not for me personally, but just from anecdotally looking at the numbers. So that would be my takeaway. But yeah, at least they'll look at it and hopefully they don't change it too much. But this is what it is. And like we said, like coming out of All Out, remember, like it's gonna be like I think that some of the changes that we're seeing is like a 2-step back for 5 steps forward approach, and they kind of got some really good numbers and some good indicators those weeks that people like the shows. I still think that this is the right path to go down, even if you're going to drop another 100,000 viewers. I still think you're booking the show more effectively, more efficiently with this type of strategy rather than like the like I said, the runaway train type of approach that if this was 700,000 people, if it was like 1,000,009, 875, 85, 825 last night, then it would be more of a problem for Tony Khan.
But, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
No, it's not a bad number. It's not a bad number. It's just, it's lower. So it's like, you got to wonder, okay, what happened there?
And the thing that matters the most, that's why I started with it, is number one, it was the number one thing in cable last night, which is get you, in theory, the most ad dollars. Obviously, wrestling is much maligned. And I know I saw an ad for, something for like Truly. I was like, I'm not buying your effing seltzers, Truly, even though there's like something every 4 minutes. And there's another joke on Twitter that I saw that was like, oh God, I mean, you watched it live, right? Is there any, we get the same national commercials.
We do. I nothing really,
there was some maybe it was for, I don't know, it was something that did not mesh with wrestling at all, and it had 4 ads throughout the night, and it was very funny. And someone commented on it. So if it sparks my memory, I will do that. But yeah, it's getting. TBS is very happy to have the #1 show on cable every Wednesday. That is the top line number. From there, as long as Comcast is not by Turner and HBO Discovery, then it's all kumbaya and they're all happy. Then we got bigger problems for both companies if they're had the same parent company. But we'll save that for
God, that'll be fascinating. That'll be fascinating if that goes down. Thanks, Trace, for this insight. Kids in their 20s don't have a clue what's on TV. Something to consider, something to consider for sure.
Yep.
Amos, thanks for joining us. Glad to be here. Looking forward to seeing your comments as we go on. Couple more AEW Grand Slam topics. The Acclaimed, homegrown AEW talent winning the AEW World Tag Team titles. I thought that was just a cool moment. I don't think the match was okay. Match was fine. The All Out match I thought was better, but in the end, I liked. It was just cool to see that kind of happen in my eyes, and the crowd pop was huge, positive reaction. Like I said, clunky in terms of the booking. I think of the finish in particular, I thought was a little odd. But I like the match. I like that the Acclaimed are tag team champions. I think this makes a lot of sense, and I give Tony Khan credit for pivoting.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just reading the comments. They're very funny.
I got to get in.
Did you explain on the post show something to Ryan last night? Is that what I'm reading here?
Yes, I did. We did.
Can you enlighten me on your PG rendition of what scissoring is? It's like when two, women love each other very much, and sit in a certain.
We read the Wikipedia definition. That's what we did to answer that question, and we netted out in the right place, and so that was it, and that was his 4th question. Ryan is a 3-question guy usually, but he added in the 4th for a curveball. So yes, we've recovered.
That's very funny.
Yeah, it was a funny moment. Not PG last night. That's right, Tracy. Although it's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's a weird thing to like. I said this yesterday on the post show, but I've been asking like people who don't watch wrestling, like, hey, there's this catchphrase going on in AEW, the scissor me catchphrase, and they're like stunned that's on like t-shirts that kids are wearing, and it's not like a prude type thing. It's just the next question that is out of their mouths is, hey, does everybody know what that means? And I'm like, well, yeah, I think so. Like, I would imagine so, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I digress. But that was a nice little curveball.
That's good. Good. I'll have to go back and listen. I'm not listening yet. But your original question about the match, yes, I agree. I like the all-out match better.
Yeah.
I was also, again, on the MJF thing, not to make everything MJF related now that he's back, but like Swerve and Our Glory were in the face position of the match, and the Acclaimed were in the heel position of the match. And I thought that was very, when the match started and they switched, basically, my question is like, they had to have known that Swerve and Our Glory were going to be the heels in this match, and that the crowd was going to be fully behind the Acclaim. So why set them up in the face position and the Acclaimed in the heel position to then seemingly start the match an opposite? It's a very small thing, but to me, paired with the MJF thing, just says like a sort of lack of institutional control on knowing who your characters are, and that was just something that it didn't affect the match for me, but it was just interesting, and maybe that's go ahead.
So we'll go back. So what are you talking about in particular? Like, because I don't know that I got that.
So I'm saying like, so when you have a tag team match, right? The face team is always facing the hard cam, so you see their faces, so you can see the hot tag when they grab the rope and slam. And then the heel tag team is almost always has your back, or I know that's not why they're called heels and faces, but to me that makes a lot more sense on why you can call. That's how I explain it to people that don't know. And they're like, oh, I get the term. I was like, so that's my little, if you need to tell someone that doesn't like wrestling,
Yes.
good guys, bad guys, for everyone out there, that's a good way to do it. But to start that way, I thought was interesting. I know it's not a super rule of thumb, but there was no super big hot tag in the match either. So again, it's not a huge issue. But that was just one note. And then as Zach and I talked about on Twitter a little bit too, and if you read my report, I liked 98% of the match. I didn't like Billy Gunn having to attack Swerve without the ref seeing to have the Acclaimed win. It felt, they did everything they could to win, but they still feel, like they didn't get a straight up win, which maybe we'll come back to that at some point. And he gives Swerve something to do. Maybe if him and Billy Gunn have a match and you give Swerve a win against Billy Gunn, all that makes sense. But I didn't think that was the optimal supreme way to get the Acclaimed over, was to kind of pull out all the stops, get a mild heel victory, and not get a clean win in your, crowning moment where you have pink and white confetti shooting when you win the title. But I like the match. I like where it's going. I'm so behind this. I don't want to sound like negative, but there's things that we're here to be critical, and those were the notes I had to be critical on the match. But I thought really everything else in between was pretty good.
I think that's fair. I think it's fair. That came up yesterday on the post show too, and I was a little more like, I don't know, lenient with it. And I probably shouldn't been, because I rag on that kind of thing all the time.
Yeah,
but for some reason,
we're flipped. Usually I'm the one that's like, yeah, who cares? It's fun.
I don't know. I think it was, for me, the reason was because that Billy Gunn has been so central to getting or helping the Acclaim get to like this level of popularity for whatever reason. I still don't really understand it, but he's there and is around. And so his involvement, I guess, for that reason didn't bother me as much, but it probably should have.
Yeah. Just based on how vascular he is, I think is the reason he's in this, the still of him and Anthony Bowen's scissoring. Sorry. Where they're like, and then there's like the still where it looks like their faces are like, warped. Very funny. So just Billy Gunn being that guy for literally like 30 years, I think he's a good sport. He's put up with a lot of BS, and I think people are kind of cheering him for like doing all that and going through the Chuck and Billy stuff, all that stuff, to be like, hey man, we know you ate a shit sandwich for about 30 years, so we're here behind you.
I can't believe, like, I still am amazed by his physique. Like, it's crazy. The dude, like, I remember like walking around at I think it was All Out, and I'm like, and Billy Gunn's walking by, and I'm just like, Jesus, like, he is like he's a monster. He's huge. He's absolutely huge. I don't know that he, like, at least back in the day, he didn't come across as like that huge of a guy to me. And granted, he was around a lot of big guys too, and that's not the case in AEW. But man, he stands out in that regard. What did you, Saraya, formerly known as Paige in WWE, made her debut yesterday. Huge pop, big reaction. I thought I was just so happy with that moment, because look, there's something to be said for feeling the emotions, of a big debut like that, and like a big comeback like that, and getting that reaction. So you could see why people would tear up or whatnot, just react to that moment outside of the character, right? Outside of the role you're playing. But I always think about, like, okay, when Steve Austin would come out, like, after any sort of hiatus or just been gone, and he got these big pops, like, he wasn't reacting to the audience reaction. He was just playing the part. And I thought Paige last night, like, did that. I mean, I thought she walked out on that stage and just, instead of like standing there to soak it in, like, she took that reaction and rolled with it, and looked like a star walking down that ramp, and somebody that wasn't necessarily, like, I'm sure she was maybe surprised by the reaction, but she didn't look like it. She looked like, yeah, of course I got this reaction. Like, and I thought that spoke volumes. That spoke volumes to me. Steven, this is me. That's ice cold. Ice cold, my friend.
Tried not to smirk while that was popping up. But
what do you think, though? I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic here because I've said this multiple times for additions to the women's division of like, all right, this is the person now. This is who you're going to build around. I think Saraya is significantly a bigger star than most of the roster. Can they make it work? I don't know.
Yeah. So the moment itself, I liked a lot. I actually liked the women's match quite a bit last night. I thought for a four-way match, I think it was really well laid out. You could tell they really put a lot of time into those transition spots. And, sometimes you can really feel like those matches are, hey, let's call it in the ring, brother. And they're like, oh, it's kind of rough sometimes.
Yeah.
Versus playing it out. It felt very much like a 2016 NXT four-way match between like four super talented people that was really well thought out at like a takeover or something. But I digress. Typically, I would absolutely be destroying this segment in almost every other sequence because Saraya comes out. That's the correct pronunciation, right? Saraya. I've always just read it. Okay. She comes out. The heels run away. She's the focal point. She like picks the hand of the champion up, and they're like, look, and her and Athena, Toni Storm and Athena look like the backup for Saraya in this situation. But it worked because she is like bar none the biggest star in the division at this point. I think it's her, I think it's Jade, and I think it's Britt Baker are the three most over women in the company. And Saraya's stock can drop, but obviously the crowd reaction last night, what she did in WWE, if she can wrestle on a consistent basis or not even like, right? You could have a wrestle every 6 weeks. I mean, Jade barely wrestles and works. So like you take, again, typically I would hate this, but the division is such a spot that needs such star power that I liked it a lot. And it showed a, hopefully a commitment to her at the top, her and Jade at the top of that division. I think if you did that and built to a match like that or whatever, if you have those three and then maybe a fourth person in and out, like, and then you have Ruby Soho, Toni Storm, Athena, you have Serena Deeb, all these people who are good workers but are not like top tier stars as they begin opportunities, at least in my opinion, to level out, have good matches all around the card and not rely on Bunny and Penelope Ford matches. Then like I think you can really talk about in a couple weeks a good division going on here.
You absolutely can. The pieces are definitely there. Generally speaking, Zach, I would agree with this. I think I'm making it a little bit of a longer run to the title. I almost think you want to build to Saraya and Jade at some point. Like I think that's what you're building towards if you're Tony Khan, or if I was Tony Khan anyway. There's money in the Saraya comeback story, period. Like, everybody knows her history with injuries in her neck and the fact that she retired from in-ring competition, I think 4 or 5 years ago. So for her to be back and even semi-active, like, you got to run with that. And Full Gear might just be just a little bit too quick of a turnaround. But you're right though. This is the other thing. It's like you don't want to waste time because you don't know how much time she has given her injury history. So that certainly is the other side of the coin. But I just think there's just so much money in her chasing down that title, especially if it's around the waist of Jade Cargill while she's still undefeated. Like that all of a sudden is a really big match.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask you. Like if you're booking this, right, is it Jade gets the women's title and has both titles and or drops the TBS title as a result, a la Goldberg did, and then Saraya is the one to defeat her when she's 52-0 or whatever, or do you have Saraya get the world title, Jade continue what she's doing with the TBS title, and then have like a title versus title between the two of them? Like, what's your optimal story? Or is there a third option that you would do if you were Tony Khan?
No, I would do the first one. I would do the first option. I would have Jade just gobble up all the belts. And because look, I mean, she's not the AEW Women's World Champion, so she's not the quote unquote top woman of the division. But she is. So, Like, and so I think eventually you're going to want to like iron out the division a little bit. And she's off doing her own thing far too often. And I think it's time to loop her back in. And the only really real way to do that while keeping her hot is to make her the world champion. That's what I would do. And then I'd have Saraya beat her. Yeah.
I think the one thing with Jade that we don't even talked a lot about Jade and like the plumbing of her character, but like with Stokely doing his own thing now, I think it would behoove Jade to kind of drop the baddies, Hogan and Gray is her last name.
Yeah.
Layla Gray. Because I think they kind of like the Firm and MJF. I just don't think that pairing is beneficial to the top person, MJF and Jade, in that scenario. And her kind of breaking out back on her own, kind of reestablishing like what she is, I think would be a good mini story. And then her kind of wrestling more often, getting, that up the card, taking out Toni Storm and or Thunder Rosa, depending on who's there. And then starting that collision course where she's champion for 6 months, 9 months, whatever it's going to be, where then it's her and Saraya. You can have a tag match where they touch a little bit, 3 months before. But yeah, I mean, pretty much wrestling 101, but I think there's a good story to be told here. And besides Thunder Rosa, Britt Baker, 1 and 2, there's not a ton of like standout great stories that AEW has told with the women. There's been good performances, there's been good characters, but there's not a ton of stories. Maybe Deeb and Hikaru Shida when they were wrestling a lot a while back, but really not much is coming off the top of my head for stories between two women. And I think this is potential to be a good one.
It does. And the division needs it. I mean, they have to find a way to get some life into this. Saraya certainly does that. The thing is, you got to call it out. I mean, you thought Thunder Rosa would be that when she debuted. You thought Toni Storm would be that when she debuted. Didn't happen. I certainly, again, I think Saraya is a different level star, but we'll have to see. He's got to put time and effort into it. Tony Khan, that is, to make it work. And maybe with Saraya now signed and the round, he will. Okay. Anything else on AEW last night, man? I want to pivot over to WWE because there's some interesting topics to discuss there too.
Yeah, we don't spend really any time on it, but Jericho winning the ROH title, I think, is interesting for getting the Ocho, but more importantly for like what does that mean? That to me signals that Ring of Honor might have more of a weekly show on the near horizon, that Jericho is the person to buoy up to start. So that's exciting for me as a Ring of Honor guy. So that would be good. That would get up those belts off of AEW TV, which I think would just solve another problem, get more on that course of Joe and Garcia and Jericho as your champions of another company with FTR there. That's a good sign. Also a really good match. Like again, Jericho has been like picking great dance partners. He's always done that. He's always been really good at putting himself with someone more talented than him. I mean, he's 52, right? So what are you gonna do? But just like kudos to him and Claudio also to drop that, I think could be good in the long run. But yeah, that match, I was surprised, but I was pleasantly surprised. I like the direction of where that's going there. So
I do too. And I think you have not only is it going to play well for Jericho to be champion, if there is something on the horizon as far as weekly programming of some kind, whether it's TV or something else, but in addition to that, like business part of it, you now have even bigger stakes for Daniel Garcia versus Chris Jericho when that goes down. So, and I think that's really important. I mean, like when Garcia finally makes the turn and gets his hands on Jericho, and if Jericho puts him over, that will be something, a big enough moment that I think will elevate Garcia significantly. And so they've built that well. They built that well here. I don't know what it says for Claudio, at this point. Like, we talked about that a lot last night too, where it's like, okay, he hasn't shown another level here in AEW than he had in WWE. And so it's kind of like, it's not good for him to lose that title, because that, I think, was really kind of anchoring him around at least something important happening on a week to week basis. And now he's kind of lost that. And so I think he could easily be somebody that kind of fades off, a bit, and like almost like Smo Joe at this point, where it's like, oh yeah, Joe's around. I forgot about that. It's kind of a bummer for Claudio.
Yeah. And I am probably the farthest thing from a Vince McMahon apologist. Hopefully you would second me on that, Zach, for people that maybe have not listened to me a lot. But
I would. I can corroborate.
Like if this is not like a very like positive thought process to go through, but if you look at all the WWE people who came over to AEW, how many were Vince wrong about?
None.
Moxley. I mean, he wanted to re-sign Moxley, but I think Moxley's the only one that has probably bursted through. I'm sure there's going to be a comment or two here that will prove me wrong. But like all those guys that like everyone's pushed, the Miros, the Malakais, the Andrades, the Claudios, et cetera, like they're at the same level just about as they were in WWE. And I'm not saying there's like a reason for all of it. It's just like they're not top guys. There's only a handful, 3, 4, 5 top guys in the whole industry at any given time. So just like keep that in mind. And even Adam Cole, I think at this point now, his health has been an issue, but like those stories are not good when he was healthy. And, I don't know. So just something to keep in mind.
I'd argue, I think you could argue that, Vince knew the value that he had in Moxley, Dean Ambrose. Like, he wanted to sign him to a big contract, but in the end, he just wanted to use him differently, right? Like Ambrose was a world champion, multiple time Intercontinental champion, tag team champion, in the Shield. He was a solid guy, like in that company, just not how he wanted to be featured. So if you stipulate to that, yeah, I think FTR. As Zach said here, I think you could probably add them to the list. But outside of that, like, Zach, I know you're throwing Keith Lee out here, Tony Storm, Miro. How are they? Tony Storm, I guess, is a bigger star. She's the women's world champion, but she is holding the title, but not. I don't know. I don't think she's like this main event act all of a sudden. And same thing with Keith Lee and same thing with Miro. I think those two guys are, good wrestlers, but they're not really in a different spot in AEW than they were in WWE. Tyler, I think that's a really I think it's a good point. I think it's a good point and a fair point. I do think
Hassan here. I think Swerve probably, to me, is probably more pushed in AEW than he was in WWE, but I think if Triple H was in charge, I think Swerve would be probably where he is right now in WWE as well, because Swerve's obviously super talented and has a lot to give in lots of ways. But I'd even push back on FTR in that list because for one reason or another, whether it's their health, and I think they're both healthy right now, I'm not mistaken on this, like there is some reason outside of the ring, outside of that bell ringing to start and end a match, why they're not on TV as much, why we all complain about, why there's a promo last night about them complaining about not being on TV, which is stupid. But it makes Tony Khan and AEW the heel. It makes MJF get cheered for. Anyway, there's a reason that they're not on TV every week. And I don't know if that's just that Tony Khan doesn't like the way they are backstage or whatever, but it could be similar to what was going on in WWE and they were wanting to be on TV and Vince was the same way. There's lots of things, but I would say they are equal if you just watch the TV product and don't take your opinion of them. And yes, they had a good run, the ROH stuff. Without those matches with the Briscoes, I certainly think they're similar on a similar path than they were on WWE.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I caught. It's so funny. We're revisiting some topics from yesterday, but I caught myself yesterday going talking about FTR in the way that I perceive them, but not the way that they're actually perceived on TV. Like they haven't had a match. The last match that they had of any sort of impact or importance was just that it was a 6-man with Wardlow. So in my head, I think of them as they've created momentum for themselves. They've had good matches. They're tag team champions of a lot of different companies, but that's all true. But has their position really changed? You know, and that's where I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I mean, just the way they're portrayed in the company. Sorry, this would be. I'll drop it after this, but like,
no, go.
like you said, you know, with the last couple weeks, Jericho, Moxley, Danielson, and whatever the fourth person I said they were building around. And then like maybe
MJF,
Swerve, and, MJF, and maybe Swerve and Acclaimed, right? Those, but FTR is not in that what this company's been built around post All Out, and anyone coming from WWE should be that people thought had that potential to be those top guys are not in that list. And that's just my overall point there. Whether we, you know, I think we're all on the same page about FTR at the talent level. We would push them if we were in control of all things being equal, but that's not what's happening at this point.
Yeah, good point. Great point. Yeah, see, but here's the thing, Zach, you're right. I mean, I think you're right on the surface, but but there's a difference there in like, there's a lot of like great wrestlers in the world, you know, and there's a lot of great tag teams in the world, but that doesn't mean that they're, you know, a pillar of your company. Like, it just doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of talent. You know, I'm thinking. I was just watching NXT before we hopped on here, and Nathan Frazier. I was watching Nathan Frazier against Axiom, and Nathan Frazier, that guy is incredible in the ring. I mean, he's so fast and he's so crisp, and he's got a unique moveset, and he lays his stuff in, and it all comes across great. But just because he's a good wrestler doesn't mean that he's, you know, a featured guy in the company. He's not. He's just not. And he is a good wrestler. And I think FTR is different a little bit because they're a bigger star. But being a good wrestler does not equal, you know, top necessarily top guy or pushed guy or pushed act. It just doesn't. In a lot of cases, I think you could argue the opposite. Like, you know, Hulk Hogan, not a great in-ring technician, but, you know, arguably the biggest star the business I've ever seen. So I think it's important to like talk about that nuance because FTR may be the best tag team in the world, but are they being positioned as that in AEW? I'd say no at the present time. Tyler, that's a good point, man. I think that's a God damn, we could do a whole podcast about that.
Yeah, so you can write you can take, you know, I'll be your editor. That's your story for the newsletter if you want to. So
I was just gonna say, I was like, yeah, someone should write a piece on that for sure. All right, let's talk about WWE for a bit too, because I want to make sure we get to that. We're gonna run long here, but that's cool. Logan Paul against Roman Reigns, polarizing. It's going to happen at Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia on November 5th for the Universal Tag Team. We're talking about tag team. Universal, undisputed Universal Championship. Jeez, easy for me to say. Where are you at on the idea of this match? I mean, is it because it's getting beat up, you know, in social media circles, but also defended in those circles too. Like, I've seen arguments both sides. I have my opinion about it, but are you buying this, or are you just kind of rolling your eyes at it?
Yeah, I would say any Saudi Arabia show that WWE puts on, it feels not exactly like a pocket universe within WWE, but it feels closer to that than like mainline WWE stuff. I think it's stuff is built to it, but it feels more like a detour than like a proper PLE. It feels, and I think this match fits that boat. It kind of, I'm sure Logan is known over there, so it's a name to go against Roman Reigns. If you're not going to bring back, you know, a Goldberg, if you're not going to bring back a Undertaker, if you're not going to bring back a Steve Austin for a big payday match against Roman Reigns, I'm okay with it. Because these shows don't really mean anything to me, and I don't think big things should be happening on these shows. I don't think Roman Reigns should be losing the title to a Kevin Owens on a show like this or something like that. So it being essentially, you know, at least I call it blood money as a joke. Lots of people do, right? Because that's what this is. So them getting a main event like this is totally fine with me. It's noteworthy that it's happening, but I'd rather, if you're going to do this, I'd rather be here than any other main event. Because if this is the Royal Rumble, if this is Extreme Rules, even like it feels much more contrived and forced that you're trying to get a star in here to do something like this. And this feels more like the pay-per-view that fits it for me. The thing that I thought was the most important was Triple H saying that he was the table. For as a Botchamania fan, I found that very funny. I know, and I see what he's doing. So that was the key highlight of that press conference to me. Also, Triple H having a press conference. I see what you're doing there. You see, just a huge one blew up, and you had a totally professional, on point press conference. So Triple H is
the pettiness knows no bounds.
Yeah,
Tony
Khan catching strays even during a Saudi Arabia press conference. So.
You know what? I love it. I love that kind of thing. I mean, I really do. It's a shot, but he would never admit that it is. I passive aggressive. I'm fully behind that. I'm with you, man. Like, I think WWE is going to try to make these crown jewel shows more a part of. Just a part of the regular WWE calendar. I think that's going to be an attempt that they're trying to, do, because I think they realize it's real hard to book like that show, but then another, pay-per-view at the same time. We've seen them have to balance that out, and it always gets really, really muddy. So I guess they would like it to kind of flow more into, the flow of their year. But I'm with you though. If this is happening at, SummerSlam, or if it's happening at Royal Rumble, like you said, I think, you probably have a problem. But look, it's pro wrestling, right? And you want stars going up against one another. I realize that Logan Paul hasn't earned, a title shot. But he made the challenge. And what's Roman Reigns supposed to do? Roman Reigns, the character, isn't running away from that. He's laughing it off pretty much exactly like he did. And so I'm okay with this. I wonder how they booked the match though. Like, because Reigns should really just decimate this guy, and they're already talking up or not they, but Logan Paul is talking up, hey, it only takes one shot, right? My guess is they're going to lean into that heavily. And there's your near fall. But I hope you guys in the chat are talking, hey, it's going to be 5 stars. I mean, I not that it wouldn't be fun to watch Roman Reigns have a 5-star match against Logan Paul from an entertainment perspective. Okay, I'll get behind any 5-star match.
Save that for him taking on McAfee, because McAfee could actually probably help him get there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just either one of them. Neither one of those guys should be having a 5-star match with Roman Reigns. From a time perspective, booking perspective, just that shouldn't be. I hope we don't see that, because that will be hard to buy. But I'm here for it. It's going to be a spectacle, and I think it's okay in this instance.
Yeah. I mean, so how I would book it is, I'd have Roman, maybe he takes one punch, rolls out of the ring to avoid the pinfall. But besides that, that's like your near fall potential, or he gets his foot on the bottom rope, whatever. But I would have this be the only title defense that Roman doesn't need the Usos or Heyman or Sammy. He just beats him straight up because he's a wrestler, and Logan Paul is not a wrestler. And that is kind of the wink and the nod to the audience that we knew this was, hey, it's blood money. What do you expect? This is kind of a joke. So here's Roman just beating this guy clean, essentially. And that's kind of how I would book it from there. The one thing I know it's not talked about, but man, Braun is back. He better defend that stupid green greatest Royal Rumble of all time belt. That's all I care about.
Champion.
Yeah, the lore of that stupid title belt that I've never seen again, I think is the now that he's back, that's all I care about. He's got to do it.
Oh my God!
Have Jericho come out at 50 and wrestle for 2 minutes. If we were all recall that, have the sumo wrestler guy who they tried to convince them was Yokozuna because they could not convince them that Yokozuna was dead. Go back and watch. That is a crazy show. I think that was the first one, right?
The first one, yeah, the greatest Royal Rumble.
Oh my God, insane. We should do
man, that
a
wasn't
watch along on a slow week on that.
That wasn't that show. That's the one where Titus has like the botch too, right? Where
Yeah.
he trips and falls all the way under the ring.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't draw that up.
Yeah.
Couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Iconic, I would say.
Too fun. Iconic. Yeah. Okay. So Logan Paul, we're on the same page there. It's polarizing, even if you read our chat here, like, it's, there's people that are fine with it and Zack is not, and that's okay.
And it's not like a dig on anybody. I just think like Zack, I think you have more respect for that title than the company does for that title. So that is not like me calling you out. I just think like that's just the perspective of it, and it is what it is. But the fact that you respect that title more than the company does, I think is good. That's why the sport is still as passionate as it is out there, and why as many people still watch it. So,
well, I mean, I still don't see I just don't see a problem with it. Like, it's not, there's like when who recently got a title shot against Roman Reigns? It was Riddle, right? Let's just take that for example. It's not like, I don't remember if he won a match or something to get into it, but Riddle, like, at that point had lost a lot of matches too, so it's not like WWE does not abide by like rankings where it's always the next top guy that's getting a title shot. Rey Mysterio has had a title shot against Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens, Cesaro, Finn Balor. Like, it's not that. I don't think it's that they don't necessarily care about the title, but they need to fill time, and so I'm okay with this for that. I would like to see. Hold on, Zach. I'll get to that in a minute. I would like to see them try to iron that out a little bit, but Logan Paul is a big name, and so you go with it. I think you go with it as long as it's on this kind of a show. Okay, Zach, would I be okay if the Torch staff formed a football team and challenged the Chiefs in the Super Bowl? I mean, of course not. But I mean, Zach, that's apples and oranges to me. I mean, Tyler, I don't know what you think about it, but I mean, of course that we would not challenge the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Well, you'd have to challenge the Rams. I mean, the Chiefs won 3 years ago too. They're not even the reigning defending.
Yeah. Well, let's challenge the Rams, right? But it's like, it's just not. I don't think it's the same thing. For one, it's not an actual sport. This is pro wrestling, and yes, you're kind of creating the environment and the illusion of a real sport, but really, it's a promotion. It's like Conor McGregor against Floyd Mayweather, like ridiculous in every sense of the word, but reasonable. Because you can draw a lot of money and it's a big fight and it's a big spectacle. And so you do it. Like, this is on that type of level, I think. Yeah.
Well, and like if you were to transport this, if they were to have a legit boxing match, like Logan would destroy Roman Reigns, Joe, he would destroy Joe, the human being, in a boxing match because that's his specialty in real life, right? So to transport that skill set into another one, it's like not like Zack or I going against Roman Reigns, right? Like, Roman would beat us up in real life and would be is 1,000 times a better professional wrestler than either of us are as well. So that's the apples and oranges as us versus the football team, because we would also get destroyed because we probably run, Zack, you and I probably run a 5.5 flat 40, and we need to run like a 4.3 to at our size and height to make in the league. So
yeah, well, I mean, okay, but like, here's the other, like, Jason Powell, I think he brought this up at some point, either on one of his shows or on Wade's show. It might have been Wade's show, but Brock Lesnar got a UFC heavyweight title shot. Not because he had this great record in the UFC, but because he was a big star. He's a big name, and that's, sometimes that happens. And so I'm okay with it. Go ahead.
If we can keep on this analogy, do I look like an offensive lineman, Zack? I'm very I'm taken aback by that.
Tyler is the offensive lineman. Yeah, I
need to put on
can't
about
tell how
100
tall you are. How tall are you?
I'm 6 feet tall. I am.
Or 6 feet tall.
Yeah, and 200 pounds. There's my
Good.
my height and weight for you. I am not an offensive lineman.
Well, what position do you want to play, Tyler?
I want to play offensive coordinator.
Oh, all right. So you don't even want to.
No, I will draw up. I'll draw up the plays.
Right,
kind of what I do here at the Torch, right? I'm the hand of the king.
Hand of the cat.
I give good ideas to people.
I love it. I'll be wide receiver, I guess. I'll be wide receiver. Joel. Oh, Joel, you cracked me up. Okay, I got a couple other topics.
Okay.
We'll rapid fire them, and then we'll call it a day. What is going on with these finishes on Monday Night Raw and on SmackDown? Like, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, where it's like, hey, these matches are great, and it's fun to see matchups like Bobby Lashley and Seth Rollins, and awesome. But I feel like since we had that discussion, it's all been like either DQ or interference or some other kind of shenanigans. Like, in terms of finishes on those big matches, it's gonna be a problem sooner or later. Like, when you continue to showcase your matches that way, your top matches, and you never pay them off, you're not going to be able to use them to draw eyes. And I don't know what's going on with Paul Levesque, but man, I think this, for all the good that he's kind of done to freshen up that show, this is a pretty big negative in my eyes.
I agree. It's the one like huge holdover for what everyone did not like about the late stage Vince McMahon era of WWE, and for how fast and how many things changed. Even the color scheme of NXT, right? It proves that this is what Paul Levesque likes in when you have two big top tier names on free TV, right? It's still not to pay it off and have the finish. Now the ratings bear that out, that is a better strategy. Is the counter argument. I don't tend to agree with that when you're a brand that's been on 30 years longer than your opposition and have that built-in thing there. But yeah, I mean, let's hope they pivot, but it's not good. It is not helping probably the couple 100,000 people you've gained in your viewership over the past couple of weeks, especially during the fall season where you have a lot to compete against, as we talked about at the top of the show. But we'll see. There's really not, in my opinion, not much else to say besides it sucks, and I hope it changes because it hurts the product big time. Because if you know there's a big match on, then you just know, like, hey, I'm not going to get a result here, and it's just going to continue on to the next week. And why am I even watching this?
Right. That's it. Yeah. And the other thing, like, is just the matches that this has been happening in have been good matches. Like, I thought Lashley and Seth Rollins this week was a hell of a match. And then, but no one's going to remember it because it just, because of the way the finish. Same thing with Austin Theory and Kevin Owens. I thought that was a really good match, but again, you're not going to remember it because of these finishes. So, all right, well, good. I mean, at least I'm not alone in that criticism.
I mean, I thought even AEW last night was on dangerous ground with almost every match needing an object or just one little extra thing. It's like even that was like a little much for me. So imagine my watching WWE. So
no, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree, and I think, for as smart as it is to feature the U.S. title the way it's been featured, and same thing with the Intercontinental title, you can't successfully do that long term if you don't have finishes to these matches where it actually feels like it's worth your time to invest. So it would be interesting to see like what the ratings look like, because I think, look, what you saw coming out of the Triple H taking over was, hey, people are interested in that in and of itself. What is the product going to look like? And then Triple H did feature, I think, some smart matches, some intriguing matches, some fresh matchups, but didn't pay him off with finishes. So now how long does that go? Right? Like, because now it's like, oh, great, you have this really cool, intriguing match, but we pretty much know you're not going to get a finish on that. So he's kind of been playing with house money for a while, and now I think you'll start to see, it may not be this week, it may not be next week, but if this is continuing on for 6 months, they're going to have an issue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Lastly, the fight pit is back. Seth Rollins and Riddle. I think it's kind of cool. I think it's a good little gimmick. And I think it's one of the times in recent memory where they're having a gimmick match that feels like it fits the moment of the feud and not the other way around where it's like, it's Hell in a Cell season, so let's have a Hell in a Cell match. Like this kind of feels like normal pro wrestling booking, so I'm here for it. Are you excited for the fight pit?
Yeah, it feels like this is probably why SummerSlam didn't happen, right? To extend it to this, like, it's got to be the main event, right? Because there's no Roman defending the title on this show.
I would imagine so, yeah.
So that makes sense to me. It gives the advantage to Riddle as the actual shooter of the two of them. So, what is Seth going to have to do to overcome those odds via cheating? So that's all interesting. And then on the flip side, you get the comeuppance of Riddle kind of working over Seth in his environment, which is obviously aesthetically pleasing. Unless you're singing Seth's song as he walks out and then you are cheering for him to get beat up, which is another problem I know you love. So I'll just leave it there. But
drives me crazy.
But yeah, no, I like it. It's also not an overdone gimmick.
Right.
Also, a huge fan of the Survivor Series. I mean, I cannot put that over more. Having the War Games as the main event.
Yep.
Could not be more excited about that in comparison to how lame Survivor Series has been the last couple of years. So both those on the gimmick matches to main event the next couple shows. I like this time of year is the time to do it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Like high level stuff, I think WWE's been really making some good decisions lately. It's more that micro stuff that has been a little bit of the problem, but it is what it is.
Yep, I agree on War Games. Like we'll dig into that as Survivor Series approaches. But it's a good refresh. There's no doubt because it was so stale. My goodness. Timothy Thatcher is not in WWE anymore. I believe he's wrestling for Pro Wrestling Noah. I think in Japan. Someone check me on that, but I believe that's where he is right now. So Dr. Ross, you got to pick up some Pro Wrestling Noah to get your Thatcher fix. All right, man. Let's call it a day. Let's call it a day right there.
He's a Noah, right?
No, Pro Wrestling Noah. Yes. See. Yep. All right. I can sign off. Happy hopes.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody who joined us and for everybody who tuned in after the fact. James, thank you. Dr. Ross, Amos, Zack, Tracy, thank you very much. Steven, thank you very much. And to everybody else, again, very much appreciate you guys being here. As always, you can check out the YouTube channel for some content. Yesterday, Tyler, you had a fun little preview for AEW Grand Slam. There's 2 new interviews up with Steve Macklin from Impact Wrestling, Eddie Edwards from Impact Wrestling. So lots to digest there, and would appreciate if you're watching this to subscribe to the channel for more content like that, some content from Wade, and just and this show right here every Thursday at 4 Eastern. And then tomorrow, Tyler and I are going to hop back on live here to preview SmackDown. So click the little notification button. You'll know when we go live, and we'll preview SmackDown. Roman Reigns is back on the show. There is a SmackDown or a tag team title match, the Usos against the Brawling Brutes. So lots to discuss, lots to break down. We'll be here for that tomorrow. Cool. Tyler, thanks, man. Cool. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. As always.
All right, guys. We'll see you all later.